Hey there and welcome back to South Park: The Stick of Truth. My name is Pete and today we complete another side quest in the game. We will explore South Park a bit more and in true completionist fashion we will also unlock a few more achievements. Now in the last episode the elves stole the Stick of Truth from the kingdom of Cooper Keep and we now need to recruit Token, Tweak and Crack to help get the stick back. And we will get started with that today. Before we do however, let's quickly talk to Butters.
What, you want me to fight with you? Okay, this paladin is ready to kick some ass.
And then we can do some shopping.
Guess I'm minding the shop now. You need any weapons or armor? You name it, we'll sell it.
Now we can not only buy here but also sell stuff, but we won't do that.
What are you selling?
The simple reason there is an achievement for not selling anything throughout the entire game, and of course I plan to unlock that.
Got some pretty good wares here.
Instead, we are just here to buy one very specific item. That item is the Sickle Sword of the Faithful, a melee weapon and a slight upgrade over the Jewish staff that we currently have equipped. Now, is it necessary to buy this? Well, probably not. We received the Jewish staff just in the last episode, and it will very likely be serviceable for the next hour in the game. Still, the Sickle Sword of the Faithful is undoubtedly the better weapon. For 450 it's not all that expensive, and since we're playing on hardcore difficulty, everything that we can use to get an edge in combat sure can't hurt.
A nice purchase.
So let's buy the sword, and then we can also go into the inventory to equip it. Here you can see the Jewish staff with a damage output of 17 to 24 times 2, while the sword is only 14 to 20 but times 3, and it also does plus 7 bonus damage. So let's make the switch, and now we can finally get moving. Now we just unlocked Butters as our companion, who will now help us in combat, which is very useful, but for the moment we'll focus a bit more on looting.
You kids be careful now. My Eric certainly has a lot of little playmates. He's such a friendly boy.
Also very important, making friends whenever possible. There are multiple achievements for that.
Yeah, fuck his shit up.
Now this just goes to show you that we can destroy a lot of stuff in South Park, but for the most part we won't do that in this playthrough. When we have a bit more time to talk, I will explain why.
This is the king's room. I don't think we're supposed to be in here. What exactly are you looking for? Wow, Eric has a lot of cool stuff.
That he does indeed. Of particular interest in this room, however, only the drawer next to the bed, as well as the one below the Mr. T poster on the other side of the room. We can then also play around with the radio, but other than that, there's nothing to interact with in this room. So up next, the bedroom of Cartman's mom, where we once again have two objects of interest.
This is where the magic happens. Last week, Cartman's mom was here with a few men having a whole lot of magic. She was doing hand magic and butt magic.
We also just received our first die, but let's loot the bathroom first before we apply that.
This is where Cartman does magic. Smells like the wizard is brewing some potion in here. Some wizard stew. Oh, looks like he forgot to flush the stew.
Now, using die is very simple. We just have to go into the inventory, select the piece of equipment that we want to change the color of, and then simply select from one of the colors we have unlocked. Now, I decided to simply darken the holy robes a bit, and now that we've learned that, we can proceed by using Cartman's toilet.
If it splashes, it means you get a free wish.
And once again, we want to use every available toilet in the game whenever possible. The minigame here does not only exist to entertain us, but what we produce is actually very useful in combat, and I'll demonstrate that in a moment.
We aren't allowed to go into the street. It's such an open world, our parents don't want us getting hurt. But those are holy icons from the Orient. Legend has it that he who can collect enough will be rewarded.
The Wizard King says I'm too ginger to be one of the humans, but Paladin Butters lets me be his squire on the sly.
Paladins seek justice for all races.
Right, we just opened our second garage, we found our first Shin Pokemon, we befriended Dougie, and we can now enter Butters' home.
Behold, the residence of Butters the Merciful.
Butters really is a very sweet boy. I hope you'll treat him as you would a normal child.
Ah, this must be the new kid.
We're playing, Dad.
Good for you. You Facebook me right away if Butters does something he should be grounded for.
Alright, we just unlocked our first perk. Those are rewarded to us whenever we reach a certain amount of friends, and now that we have 7 friends, we can choose our very first perk. These perks are basically passive abilities that increase your strength in certain areas, and for our very first perk I have decided to go with Apprentice, a perk that increases our maximum PP amount, which strikes me as sensible seeing as we have 2 abilities that are quite useful, and because we're also regenerating PP every time we get hit, having a larger pool to fill seems to make sense to me.
room.
Upstairs we can now loot Butter's room, which will in a second give us the key to the Chaos Lair.
Those are my minions. They help me punish society.
Next to the key that we can't use just yet, we can also find the second of 30 Chin Pokemon in South Park, another collectible in a collection that we of course want to complete. Let's not overlook the loot in the hallway here and then enter the bedroom of Butter's parents. The most important item here is definitely the garage key, which we will use in a moment to unlock the third of 14 garages. Before we do that, however, a quick trip to the bathroom, and you know the drill, first we loot and then we poop. Or not in this case, seems like the last time was still too recent. Well then, let's head back downstairs and then outside and continue by looting the Stodge family garage. And the Druid gloves here, a piece of equipment that we cannot use at the moment since our level is too low. Using the bow that we acquired in the last episode, we can now shoot down the Chin Pokemon from the tree here, which then allows us to grab it from the ground, and now we have collected number 3 of 30. We have now once again reached our house, and after completing the first part of the game in Cartman's backyard, we are also now allowed back in.
You can't expect me to pat you on the back just because you've made a few friends. As soon as you have a lot of friends, then I'll be proud.
Oh, look, you've made friends. I'll be your friend too, sweetie. It'll make you look popular.
So we cannot befriend our dad, at least not yet, but we can befriend our mom, and with all of the boxes gone, we can now also access our parents' bedroom. Inside there are 4 places we can grab some loot from, although mostly it's just cash or junk.
We must get back to the quest at hand, my lord.
And once again, we will take a trip to the bathroom. While we have looted the place already, we can now use the toilet again.
If it splashes, it means you get a free wish.
And that's it, let's leave again and head back outside. Now that we have a weapon, we can smash the snow pile over to the left of the house, and we can loot the bag that is located behind it for a health potion. Using that same weapon, we can also clear the way onwards, where we will have our first encounter with the Timmy Express. Now we can use the Timmy Express to fast travel to all the fast travel locations we have discovered so far. However, the only other one that we have discovered so far is in Cartman's backyard, and that is exactly where we're coming from, so we have no need to go back there. Instead, we can continue into our first fight of this video.
These lands hold many dangers, new kid.
Yeah, you moved to the wrong realm.
Nice hair, douchebag.
Right, we're ambushed by 4 elves, and on hardcore difficulty, that is already a fight that can be pretty tough.
Suck on this.
You're hurt. This looks like a job for Paladin Butters.
Now, Butters introduces us to his healing ability.
I got your back, yo. I'm beat. I better wait a turn before I do any more healing.
This is an ability he can use once per turn before attacking, and it seems quite helpful at first until we consider that we're playing a Jew. Since the Jew class performs best when its health is low, we might want to skip the healing touch occasionally to get a bit of extra power behind our attacks.
Hey look, you're bleeding.
Now we're introduced to status debuffs, such as bleeding for example, which have various negative effects on our character in combat. Bleeding for example causes damage at the end of every turn and can stack up to 5 times. However, this is not necessarily permanent, as it can be treated.
You're not waiting on me, are you? It looks bad. Here, take some of this magic cure potion.
Now once again, the magic cure potion, a very sensible idea for every other class than the Jew.
Make sure you always carry a few potions. Just don't get grounded for raiding the apothecary's pantry like I did.
Our weapon would actually get a 5% damage increase for every debuff we have on us, so since we're bleeding, we would actually do more damage at the moment. Now we have no choice but to get rid of it here, but in future fights we might actually want to endure 1 or 2 status effects, simply to get our damage output up.
Take this.
Up next, we are going to unlock our first achievement of this episode, and we can do that by flinging one of our self-made turds at one of our opponents. This unlocks the Made This For You achievement and grosses out the opponent, which causes him to take damage every turn, so very similar to bleeding, but it also prohibits him from healing.
Feel my righteous fury.
So it's very useful on enemies that heal often, as it can significantly increase the speed at which you are able to take one of those enemies down. We are now also going to use Jiu-Jitsu for the first time, an ability that does a good amount of damage, although not as much as the Sling of David, but more importantly, an ability that stuns our opponent. Stunned opponents cannot do anything for the next turn, they cannot attack, use items or abilities, and they also cannot defend themselves, which makes Jiu-Jitsu a very useful ability to quickly thin out a group of enemies.
Well, you're good at adventuring.
So here we are, our first larger group of enemies defeated, and I would say in convincing fashion. In good RPG fashion, we will now loot their bodies, which will give us a bit of cash and potions, and then we'll proceed westwards.
Sorry, but we can't be friends until you have more friends.
Now we have a few seconds here, and that gives me a moment to talk about the destructible stuff in South Park. Now there are quite a few things here in South Park that we can use a weapon on to destroy them and get a few items. The thing is, those items will always be junk items, items that we can only profit from if we sell them. However, since we're not allowed to sell anything, to not void the For the Hoarder achievement, it doesn't really make sense for us to pick up junk in the first place. So we will only loot containers and leave the junk items be.
I'm actually faster at Facebook messaging than I am at speaking. Here, this'll just go a lot faster if I friend you.
Sure is a lot of walking.
Right, just before befriending Callie, we opened garage number 4, this right here is number 5, so we already have 1/3 of garages completed.
If it splashes, it means you get a free wish.
Inside we can find a toilet that we will of course not leave unused, and then we can use our bow to shoot down the ladder that will bring us up to the top of the garage.
Are you new? Hey, that means you don't know anything about me, huh? Don't believe everything you read on Facebook, okay?
By the way, we are currently moving towards the house of Craig, who is the first of 3 guys we are currently trying to recruit. Craig's house also has garage number 6 for us to open, as well as a few elves in front that we will try to sneak past towards the front door.
You looking for Craig? Well, he can't play. He's in detention. Something about flipping off the principal.
We better get to the other guys first.
Right, looks like we should focus on Token and Tweak first, but since we're already going in this direction, we might as well keep doing that. By the way, with the elves here we avoided combat, which is something I will try to do in the future as well. Quite a few of the fights in this game are avoidable if you simply run away, and at least for the first few episodes I will try to focus a bit more on story and less on combat. We will have to fight occasionally nonetheless, simply to get some loot and also experience points. Now we are currently inside of the house of Kevin Stoley, whose parents are not home at the moment and who will in a few seconds give us a first side quest of this video. By the way, the underpants here are part of a side quest as well, but we'll get to that in due time.
Greetings, human. While I would prefer to explore strange worlds with you, it is illogical to abandon the bridge until the captain returns. The captain is my mom. I can't go outside when she's not home. But the Federation has an urgent mission for you. A tricorder was left behind on the frozen planet of Hoth. Only it's not a tricorder, it's my dad's iPad 2. I need you to beam down to the Omicron sector and locate that device before it falls into Klingon hands. I think it fell out of my backpack near the church.
Right, we have acquired our first side quest, Vulcan Around, requiring us to find and bring back the iPad of Kevin's dad. And that is actually quite easy to complete. Before we leave Kevin Stoley's house though, we can at least loot the bathroom. The parents' bedroom remains locked at this point, and after grabbing everything we can once again go to work on the toilet.
If it splashes, it means you get a free wish.
And that's everything we can do in here, so let's head back outside. Next to Kevin Stoley's house, garage number 8 waits for us. Inside, a potion, a water balloon and some junk, and right next to it, a house with a door that we can open. Behind the grill here is a treasure chest that we cannot access at the moment, so all we can do is keep going left. We now end up in front of the community center, however that one is currently closed, but we can still help ourselves to a bit of money while avoiding another fight here.
One time I got the worst nugget behind that building over there, it sucked.
Then in the parking lot, between the two cars parked on the right, we can find the backpack, which is actually pretty well hidden, but it's definitely worth checking out for the health potion alone.
There's some weirdo hanging out at the public storage. I'm not going back there.
Right next to the parking lot, we then have another bag of loot, this one accessible after smashing the log of wood in front of it. Up next, we have the school, but we'll just pass by here. We will have business here later in this playthrough, but for the moment we can just keep going.
I got beat up one time over there by that tree.
We then end up at Stark's Pond, where we want to quickly head left to grab another bag of loot, but we cannot continue in this direction, so let's go right instead. Here the pathway splits and we want to take the upper path first, because after destroying the log in the way, we end up in front of another backpack, this one holding a wig, some cash and more junk. We can then continue on the lower path, and in just a second we will be right in front of the church. Now sometimes there will be elves here, and in that case a fight is pretty much unavoidable in order to get the iPad. We however get lucky and can simply grab the iPad from behind the tree over here. Now we could return the iPad to Kevin, but we are actually pretty close to the location of two other side quests, so let's grab those as well.
This is where Jimmy gave me that noogie one time.
Instead we can continue eastwards, which will bring us close to City Hall,
You know you can die from a titty twister?
where we can fart on Father Maxi and then talk to him.
Oh, what sad times these are when the nation's youth run around in dungeon clothes playing the games of Satan. Young man, if you really want power, there's only one thing you must do. Find Jesus. Find him, and when you do, return to me.
And now, more combat.
Give it back! Give it back! Why don't you make us? That's my Justin Bieber toy. Not anymore, it's not. Aw, did baby lose her toy? Who is this? Beat a kid if you know it's good for you.
What if we just make friends instead?
Right, you might have just noticed that we started things off by shooting one of the girls with the bow. Doing this before combat will stun an opponent, so at least for this first round we have taken one girl out of the equation. And using Jujitsu, let's now make that 2.
Feel my righteous fury.
Using Butter's Hammer of Storms, we can then pretty much take out 2 of the 3 girls immediately, leaving them both with low health going into the next round. We then block the attack, and this pretty much guarantees that we get the shutout achievement for this battle, which requires us to successfully block every enemy attack in a non-tutorial battle. And why do I say that blocking here pretty much guarantees the achievement? Well, that is because we are now going to take out all 3 girls one after another, without even giving them a chance to retaliate. Now technically she could attack at this point and land a hit that goes unblocked and void the achievement, but in both of my test runs she always went for armored here, leaving us with the final blow to deal. And so with all 3 girls taken out, we now earn the shutout achievement.
You like beating up on girls? Oh, I hope they didn't break it. Oh, phew. Hey, thanks. I owe you one, kid. That was so amazing. What you did for me, I won't forget it.
Okay, we just earned ourselves another friend. We can now shoot down another gym Pokemon from the tree here, and then use the small path in the back to help ourselves to some more loot. By the way, the girls here didn't drop anything. I think they're scripted to always run away, and will therefore never leave anything of value. Up next, let's quickly head inside City Hall to help ourselves to a bit more stuff and to also grab another side quest. And once we've done that, we will return to the church to find Jesus.
Hey, kid, maybe you can help us with something. All these homeless people in South Park are making us look like a cold and heartless town. If you could go and beat the crap out of all the bums and vagrants, they'll leave town, and it'll restore South Park's reputation as a compassionate community. You gotta get every single one of those bastards, okay? Chop chop!
Right, another side quest earned, relocating homeless people, and as you might have already been able to guess, that will not go without a fight. Or 7 in this case.
I saw 2 rats running around last.
What's the matter? Lost your stick?
Once again, we'll simply run away from the elves here to avoid a fight, and these groups are randomly generated, so it's not like we're missing out on something that we can never go back to. Inside the church, then, we want to head into the 3rd row on the right, because that is where Jesus hides.
You found me! Tee-hee-hee! Next time finding me won't be so easy!
Right, we found him, so it's once again time to run away from some elves and return to Father Maxi.
Fuck you, asshole!
Do not despair, for many find Jesus only to lose him later. But the soul that does not abandon its search will surely be rewarded with his company. Remember that.
You will never get laid looking like that, kid.
Well, isn't that nice? Father Maxi simply wants us to find Jesus again, so I'd say, let's return to the church.
This elf is gonna fuck you up.
This time things are slightly more complicated. In order to find Jesus again, we now have to tilt both of these lights here towards the cross in the middle, and then use the light switch to reveal him behind the podium.
Well done, my son. I hope you didn't peek. Remember, I will always be at the side of those who have found me. You can call me once per day with this, but I can't help against bosses. They're scary. Come find me again for another.
Alright, we have now earned the friendship of both Jesus and Father Maxi. That also unlocked another perk, which we'll have a look at in a moment, but we also completed this side quest now and therefore the Are We Cool achievement. This achievement is only rewarded for completing this quest line while playing as a Jew, and was therefore pretty much the sole reason I chose this class. We can now also summon Jesus once per day to help us in fights, and we might already have a look at that in the next episode. For now, let's have a look at the perks, and I'll be going with Necessary Roughness this time, which gives us a damage bonus against targets that are stunned. This once again seems like a good idea because our Jujitsu ability can stun opponents, and whenever possible I will try to stun them before combat begins by using the bow as well. And with that, I think this is a very good point to make the cut. We have unlocked 3 achievements, completed 1 side quest, and we can very likely complete another one in the next episode. Until then, as always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!